Hello my dear stitcher! Let's start a new sampler page for chain stitch variations. Just look how many types of chain stitch you can make. There are even more funny stitches. I just chose the most interesting and cute stitches I could find. This is the part 1 video dedicated to the chain stitch, different methods, how to perform it, common mistakes and how to fix them. Chain stitch is the basic embroidery stitch and it's very versatile. It forms a line of interlocking loops that are commonly used to create outlines, borders and decorative elements. And chain stitch can be also used for filling large areas. I will be stitching in my square hoop using a hoop stand now. You can start making it from the left to right or from right to left, wherever you feel comfortable. Start by bringing the needle up through the fabric where you want to begin your stitch. Hold the thread down with your non-dominant hand to keep it in place. Then go back down into the same hole before you pull in the thread all the way through. Leave the loop and come up again in another place on the line depending on how big you want to make this chain stitch. Pull the thread way up through the loop and tie it a bit. Continue the same way along the line, each time passing the needle through the loop created by the previous stitch. Keep the stitches even in size and spacing for a neat, uniform appearance. And when you need to end the line, you just make a teeny anchor stitch right after your last stitch outside of the loop. And that will secure your last chain stitch. So this is how chain stitch looks like if you use 6 strands of floss. Try to make chain stitch using 4, 3, 2 and 1 strands of floss to see the difference. One more tip, you need to make the distance between stitches the same across the line, so your chain stitch will look consistent. Try to tie the thread for each stitch the same way, so chain stitch have the same size. Don't pull too tight, because you want it to stay here and look nice like this one, a bit rounded. If you pull too tight, it can be fixed. Just move around using your needle and release some thread and pull it again to make the way you want it to look like. As you can see, 4, 3 and 2 strands, it looks pretty. I reduced the size of the stitch for 3 and 2 strands even more to make it look nice. You may notice if you make long stitches, it will look skinny and flat. For one stitch, I don't like it. I think it could look better if the thread was thicker, for example like pearl threads. And I never use 1 strand of floss for chain stitch in my projects, but just for practice and to see the difference, try 2 stitches with 1 strand, so you will have those leaf samplers, and when you will be planning your next project and deciding how many strands to use, you will refer to this sampler page. This method is called stop method. I use it when I have a big project in a big hoop and when I use a hoop stand. You can also do it another way, when you work without hoop stand and keeping your hoop in your hands. So you can turn it around and choose the direction you feel comfortable. Just scoop a bit of the fabric. This way you can stitch much faster because you are bringing your needle back and up right away, so less movements. Just help yourself with the finger on the back side. Pop up the fabric in that place so you are able to do so. Come up inside of the loop and pull forward. Remember to pull your thread into the right direction so you will make a loop correctly. And like some other stitches like French knots, chain stitch can be easily undone. In case if you don't like it completely and want to redo it using another thread, you don't even need to cut it out. Just use your needle and carefully pull it out this way, so you can use this thread one more time in another place. You can do chain stitch backwards. It's called reverse chain stitch. The final look is completely the same as a traditional chain stitch. And some people even like it more than usual one, because it's comfortable to stitch this way. Start by making one short stitch. It's the same anchor stitch like you did for finishing a usual chain stitch, but for reverse stitch you are starting from the end. Come up in another place of the line depending on how big you want to make this chain stitch. Slide on the first anchor stitch and go back down in the same hole. You need to go with your needle between the thread and fabric without splitting anything. You can use a blind-ended tapestry needle if you're constantly splitting the thread of the fabric, or slide using the needle's eye side. It will also work well. Then continue the same way along the line, each time sliding the needles through the previous chain stitch. You can slide between the previous stitch from one side or another, it doesn't matter. The result will be the same, just do it the way you feel comfortable. Reverse chain, also known as broad stitch, so you have 2 more lines to practice the reverse chain. Keep the stitches even in size and spacing. Try to use some variegated or multicolored thread and practice the stitch in different directions, from right to left, from left to right. You may even like it more than a regular chain stitch. As you can see, there is no difference between the usual chain stitch and reverse chain stitch. They just made using 2 different ways. So try both versions and let me know in the comments which one do you like the most. Now let me try to show you the examples of wrong chain stitch. Number 1. It's when you didn't go down to the same hole. I saw the cases when people go down just near the hole inside the loop and outside the loop, and it gives the look of an even stitch. So just try to go down into the same hole and your stitch is going to look nice. Number 2, it's when you pull too tight or too loose. When you tie too much, it's puckering the fabric, and when you make it too loose or tight differently for each loop, the entire line doesn't look consistent. If you pull too tight, it can be fixed. Just move around using your needle and release some thread and pull it again to make the way you want it to look like. Try to tie the thread for each stitch the same way, so chain stitch have the same size. Number 3. It's when the distance between the stitches is different. I trained my eye for years so I can stitch without any guidelines, but if it's hard for you to keep the distance the same for the stitches, I can suggest to draw dots on the line like I did in this video. I tried this tip with kids and it worked well for them, so try it too and you will see the difference. One more tip. If you have a hard time with having the multiple threads look neat, try to stitch using those DMC pearl cotton threads. They are thick, solid threads and will lay down perfectly for such decorative stitches. I found them on Michaels and chose 3 colors for myself to practice and experiment with them. And they really look pretty for such decorative stitches like chain stitch and other stitches. You can find variated threads like this. I really recommend to play with them and have them in your collection. I think you will like it. Chain stitch is one of my favorite stitches. Experiment with different thread colors and textures to create a variety of effects, or use it in combination with other stitches for even more creative possibilities. You can use it for decoration of your clothing, you can make curls and create an extra texture and dimension as well. Like I did here for this floral dress, I like a combination of variated threads and chain stitch around. You can fill some big areas, like for example I did for the Santa's carriage. So chain stitch can add a lovely texture and depth to your embroidery work. So try this chain stitch and I'm sure you will find a lot of usage for it. I hope this video tutorial was helpful for you and you learned something. If yes, please give it a like and leave your comment. Let me know which kind of mistakes did you make and which way do you like to make a chain stitch. Do you like a usual chain stitch or reversed one? And subscribe to my YouTube channel if you want to see more videos like that. In my next video, I will be talking about all the rest chain stitch variations and you will probably learn more stitches with me. If you want to stitch this sampler too, I have many samplers like that available on my Patreon. You can also find some PDFs with such samplers on my Etsy shop. All the links in the video description below. So thank you so much for watching and see you next time. Bye!